You think anybody's coming to save you out here? The masked man yanked the chain tighter around Travis Boone's wrists, then rode away with his crew, leaving three powerful bikers beaten, robbed, and chained to trees in the Georgia woods beneath a punishing sun. Cars kept passing. Nobody stopped. Darius Cole, a black single father driving home to pick up his 9-year-old daughter, heard a weak cry for help. His phone had no signal. The robbers could return at any moment. But Darius still walked into those woods. "Don't be scared. I'll help you." 2 weeks later, with his garage about to be auctioned off, 6,000 riders rolled into town. But were they repaying a debt or chasing something much bigger? Stay with me for this one, because you will not see where it ends. And if stories like this keep you coming back, hit subscribe now so you never miss the next one. Before any of that happened, you need to understand who Darius Cole really was. Because the man who walked into those woods wasn't created in a single afternoon. He had been becoming that man for years, one long shift and one quiet sacrifice at a time, without anyone writing it down or giving him credit. Winslow Springs, Georgia had been slowly losing pieces of itself. Factories that once operated around the clock stood behind rusted fences. Downtown storefronts changed owners constantly. Young people left for bigger cities, and the town seemed to get smaller every year. Darius had watched it happen his entire life. At 41, he had built his life around refusing to let his own little corner of Winslow Springs disappear. His hands told his story before he ever spoke. They were scared and calloused from nearly 2 decades of working beneath diesel engines other mechanics refused to touch. 12 years earlier, Darius and his wife, Elena, had invested every dollar they had into a small garage on the edge of town. They named it Cole Diesel and Roadside Repair. For a while, it felt less like a business and more like a promise they had made to each other. Elena handled the books and customers. Within a week of meeting someone, she knew their name, their truck, and usually what kind of coffee they liked. Darius lived under the hood of engines. They had once dreamed about expanding the garage into a free trade school for local kids who couldn't afford college. They wanted to teach them that a wrench could open doors, just as surely as a diploma. Then everything changed. 4 years earlier, Elena was diagnosed with cancer. For almost 2 years, Darius drove her to treatments before work, worked through lunch, and came home exhausted. After she died, the house became painfully quiet. She left behind a 9-year-old daughter, Mia, and medical bills that seemed impossible to erase. From that day forward, Darius became father, mechanic, and business owner all at once. Mia was 9 years old, sharp, observant, and far more mature than most children her age. She also had asthma that could be controlled with proper medication, but the inhalers and insurance costs added another burden to Darius's already heavy shoulders. Every afternoon, Mia stayed in an after-school program run by her teacher, Linda Parker. The program stayed open until 6:30, giving working parents some breathing room. But Darius always tried to arrive before 5:30. He had broken that promise too many times already, and he could see disappointment settling into Mia's face whenever he was late. That morning, before leaving for work, Mia had handed him a folded drawing. In it, the two of them stood proudly in front of a garage with a brand-new roof. Above the door, in careful crayon letters, she had written, "Dad never leaves anyone behind." Darius folded the picture and slipped it into his shirt pocket. "Today I'll be there on time." He meant it. Elena used to say that Darius treated small promises like they mattered just as much as the big ones. The problem was that life had a habit of making honest men look like liars. And now Darius's garage was only 2 weeks away from disappearing. He owed the bank $18,400. If he couldn't pay it, the garage and the small house behind it would be auctioned. His only real chance was a fleet maintenance contract with Holland Freight. The trucking company needed someone to service 26 heavy trucks. Darius had already passed 2 technical inspections. That afternoon, he was scheduled for the final evaluation. If he won the contract, he could pay the loan, keep the garage, maintain Mia's insurance, and preserve the last physical piece of the life he and Elena had built together. If he missed it, Holland Freight would give the contract to a larger repair chain in the city. Darius also had another dream. One he rarely talked about. After Mia fell asleep, he often sat at his workbench sketching mechanical systems. His favorite idea was a portable rescue lift for heavy trucks, a system that would allow mechanics to safely work on disabled vehicles along highways without needing an expensive fixed lift. He had never patented it. Patents cost money. Prototypes cost even more. His ideas remained inside an old spiral notebook beside unpaid invoices and a photograph of Elena. And now Mia's drawing sat folded on top. That afternoon, Darius finished a mobile repair job earlier than expected and started toward town on County Road 12. He planned to make the Holland Freight evaluation and still reach Mia before 5:30. County Road 12 ran through miles of pine forest. No houses, no streetlights, and almost no cell service. Then Darius's tow truck began running hot. He pulled onto the shoulder, popped the hood, and leaned into the engine. That was when he heard something. A faint cry somewhere deep inside the trees. At first, he thought it might be an animal. Then it came again. "Help us." Darius straightened. He looked toward the tree line. Fresh tire tracks cut through the red dirt and disappeared into the woods. About 50 yards away sat 3 expensive touring motorcycles. Their saddlebags had been ripped open. Gear was scattered everywhere. But there were no riders. A pickup truck slowed as it passed. The driver glanced toward the motorcycles, then accelerated away. A sedan did the same minutes later. Nobody stopped. Darius checked the time. Less than an hour until his evaluation. A little over an hour until Mia's program ended. He tried his phone. Nothing. Not even one bar. The cry came again. This time it was weaker. Darius felt his stomach tighten. He knew what he should do. He could drive until he found a signal and call the police. He could still make the evaluation. He could still keep his promise to Mia. He could protect the only chance he had left to save his business. But whoever was in those woods might not have enough time. Darius stared at Mia's drawing through the fold of his shirt. Dad never leaves anyone behind. He reached into the truck bed and grabbed his toolbox. Then he slipped his keys into his boot. He crossed the drainage ditch and walked into the woods. About 50 yards from the road, the pines opened into a clearing. Darius stopped. 3 men were chained to separate trees. All 3 had been beaten badly. The first was an older man with a shaved head and a faded Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm. Blood ran from a deep cut above his ear. His skin was hot and dry. His eyes were unfocused. He was fighting heat exhaustion and possibly a concussion. His name was Hank Mercer. The second man was younger. Travis Boone was straining against a chain wrapped tightly around his right wrist. His hand had turned deep purple. Darius knew immediately that permanent nerve damage could occur if the pressure wasn't released. The third man sat upright despite a shoulder wound and a cut above one eyebrow. He watched Darius carefully. "You need to leave," he said. His voice was surprisingly calm. "The men who did this have guns. They could come back. His name was Garrett Sullivan. Darius looked at Travis's hand, then at the blood running down Hank's neck. He placed his toolbox on the ground. "Don't be scared. I'll help you." Garrett studied him. For a moment, neither man spoke. Darius had no idea who these men were. He didn't know what they had been involved in. He only knew they were hurt. And he was already there. He moved slowly around the clearing, studying the chains and locks before touching anything. Travis needed help first. His hand had gone from purple to gray. Darius took a small pry bar and a thin piece of metal from his toolbox. He carefully worked them between the chain and Travis's wrist. Travis clenched his teeth. Within a minute, Darius loosened the pressure. Color slowly returned to Travis's fingers. "Can you feel that?" Travis nodded. "It feels like it's on fire." "But you can feel it?" "Yeah." "Good." Darius moved to Hank. He removed his own work shirt and folded it into a pad against Hank's head wound. The bleeding slowed. But Hank's skin was dangerously hot. Darius soaked a rag with the little water he had left and placed it across Hank's neck and forehead. Garrett gripped Hank's shoulder. "Hank, look at me." Hank's eyes drifted. "Tell me about that fishing trip you keep talking about." "The one in Montana," Garrett said. Hank mumbled something. Garrett kept talking. "Come on, tell me about the river." He refused to let Hank drift away. Darius attacked the chains with his pliers, but they were industrial grade. His tools weren't strong enough. He searched the clearing. Near one of the motorcycles, beneath dry leaves, he found a key. It fit Travis's lock, but Darius had already freed him. He returned to the motorcycles and searched the torn-open bags. Then he noticed something. A symbol. A small compass star appeared on the bikes, jackets, tool bags, and metal gear. Garrett wore the same symbol on a ring. Darius kept searching. Finally, beneath one of the motorcycles, he found an emergency kit. Inside was a heavy pair of bolt cutters. He grabbed them. Then he heard an engine. A black pickup slowed on the road. Garrett's voice dropped. "It's them!" Darius looked toward the road. He had bolt cutters. They had guns. He needed another plan. He reached into his boot and pulled out the remote for his tow truck. Then he hit the panic button. The tow truck's horn began blaring. Hazard lights flashed. The alarm screamed through the forest. Darius shouted toward the road. "Police are on the way. Your plates have already been recorded." He had no idea whether that was true. He only needed them to believe it. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the pickup's engine roared. The truck peeled away in a cloud of gravel. Darius watched until it disappeared. His tow truck's dash camera had captured part of the license plate. Later, police would use that footage to identify the attackers. Darius returned to the clearing. He cut Hank free, then Garrett. He moved both men into the shade. Travis's hand was recovering, but Hank was getting worse. His breathing became shallow. His speech slurred. Darius knew they needed emergency medical help immediately. There was still no signal. He would have to find higher ground. "I'm going up the hill." Garrett grabbed his arm. "You've done enough." Darius looked at him. "You have a daughter waiting for you." Darius looked back at Hank. I'm a father. He paused. That's exactly why I can't leave him here and let his family never see him again. Then he climbed. The hill was nearly a mile away. The heat was close to 100 degrees. His shirt soaked through. His legs burned. But finally, near the top, his phone showed one flickering bar. Darius called 911. He gave the dispatcher every landmark he could remember. County Road 12. The tire tracks. The motorcycles. The clearing. 3 injured men. Then he ran back. When he reached the clearing, he was almost out of strength. But he stayed beside Hank. He checked his pulse. He kept talking. Stay with me. Keep your eyes open. You're going home. Hank's eyes fluttered. Darius kept speaking. Then something slipped from his shirt pocket. Mia's drawing fell into the dirt. Darius didn't notice. Garrett picked it up. He unfolded it. Dad never leaves anyone behind. Garrett stared at those words. Then he noticed the spiral notebook. He opened it. Mechanical drawings covered the pages. Load-bearing systems. Truck mechanisms. A portable rescue lift. Who designed these? Darius barely looked up. I did. You built it? No? Why not? Darius shook his head. Never had the money. Garrett closed the notebook carefully. He placed it back exactly where he had found it. But something had changed in his expression. Sirens finally broke through the trees. Paramedics rushed into the clearing. Police followed. Hank was placed on a stretcher. Travis's injured hand was wrapped. Garrett gave the police his statement. He described the black pickup, the attackers, and the direction they had fled. Darius quietly gathered his toolbox. He didn't ask the 3 men for their names. He didn't ask for money. He didn't wait for thanks. He had one thing left to do. Get to Mia. By the time he reached the school, it was nearly 6:15. Mia was still inside with Linda Parker. She had fallen asleep at a classroom table. Darius gently lifted her into his arms. I'm sorry. Mia opened her eyes. She saw the blood on his shirt. But she didn't ask why he was late. She asked one question. Did you help them? Darius nodded. I did. Mia rested her head against his shoulder. Then I guess I can wait a little longer. Darius closed his eyes for a moment. Then he checked his phone. Missed calls. Holland Freight. More missed calls. The final evaluation was over. The company had given the contract to the larger repair chain. Darius had saved 3 strangers. And in doing so, he had lost the one chance he had to save himself. 2 days later, Garrett Sullivan left the hospital. His first question wasn't about business. It was about Darius. He knew only a first name. Darius. A mechanic. A small garage. A daughter named Mia. And the word Cole stitched onto a work shirt. Hank and Travis helped search. They asked at gas stations, diners, garages. Eventually, someone pointed them toward a sign at the edge of town. Cole Diesel and Roadside Repair. Garrett drove there alone. No motorcycle. No leather vest. No entourage. He wanted to see the place first. The garage looked tired. A water stain covered part of the ceiling. The tow truck looked like it had survived longer than most people would have trusted. A bank notice sat on the counter. Next to it was Mia's asthma medication. Beside that were unpaid invoices. On the wall hung a photograph of Elena. Garrett understood immediately. This place wasn't simply a business. It was a family's history. Darius had brought the spiral notebook home. It sat near the register beside the notice confirming Holland Freight had chosen another company. Garrett pulled an envelope from his jacket. It was thick. He placed it on the counter. This should cover what you owe. Darius looked at it, then pushed it back. I appreciate it. Garrett frowned. It's not charity. I still can't take it. You saved our lives. I didn't do it for money. Garrett leaned against the counter. You're about to lose this place. I know. You could lose your home. I know. So why won't you take it? Darius looked toward Mia. I can't teach my daughter that kindness only matters when the person you helped is rich enough to pay you back. Garrett said nothing. Darius continued. She watches everything I do. He touched the envelope. I'd rather lose this place with my name still meaning something than keep it, because somebody bought my way out of a debt I don't believe I'm owed. Garrett had spent years around people who wanted something from him. For the first time in a long time, he was standing across from someone who wanted nothing. He asked one final question. What do you want? Darius answered immediately. Are Hank and Travis okay? Garrett smiled faintly. They're going to make a full recovery. Darius nodded. Then that's enough. Just then, Mia walked out of the back room. She noticed Garrett and disappeared again. A moment later, she returned with a glass of water. Garrett accepted it. Why did you bring me this? Mia shrugged. My dad says when someone needs help, you help first and ask who they are afterward. Garrett looked at Darius. He understood. Money wasn't going to work. Whatever he did next would have to respect Darius. Over the following days, Garrett quietly investigated Darius's reputation. Past customers spoke highly of him. He had repaired trucks for people who couldn't afford expensive shops. He had often charged less than he should have. Hank visited the property and studied the garage. Travis investigated the bank loan, auction date, and Darius's mechanical designs. Meanwhile, strange things began happening around Winslow Springs. At the sheriff's office, paperwork arrived for a massive motorcycle procession. The estimated rider count was so large the sheriff called to confirm the number. A motel 3 counties away became completely booked for one date. A fuel supplier received an unusual request for extra tanker trucks. Construction trucks began appearing around town. Lumber, roofing supplies, electrical equipment. Nobody knew who had ordered them. Road closures were scheduled for Saturday morning. Residents assumed it was a local event. At the diner, riders wearing the Compass Star patch began appearing. They paid cash. They asked few questions. They left. One waitress counted license plates from 4 different states in a single week. Walter Higgs, one of Darius's regular customers, mentioned seeing 3 riders outside the hardware store. They stayed there for 20 minutes, he said. Looked like they were watching the place. Darius shrugged. Bikers pass through here all the time. A few days later, Linda Parker told Darius that two men in leather vests had visited the school. They asked about the after-school program. Then they left a donation for supplies. Darius barely thought about it. He had more important problems. The $18,400 debt. The auction. The garage. Mia. At night, after Mia went to sleep, Darius still sat at his workbench. But he stopped drawing. Dreaming about the rescue lift felt pointless when he wasn't sure he'd even have a garage to build it in. He looked at Elena's photograph, then at the notebook. Sometimes he wondered about the three men from the woods. Had Hank recovered? Had Travis's hand healed? He never expected to see them again. But somehow, that thought hurt. The auction date drew closer. 3 days before it, the bank repossessed Darius's tow truck. That was devastating. Without the truck, he couldn't take roadside calls. Without roadside calls, he had almost no chance of closing the financial gap. Another steady customer switched to the larger repair chain. Then the electricity at the garage was shut off. Darius worked by flashlight. Travis tried to delay the auction through legal channels. But Darius refused to sign anything he didn't understand. The bank's final letter was simple. $18,400 by noon Saturday. Otherwise, the garage and house would be auctioned. Darius sold his backup welder. Then his father's old tools. Then equipment Elena had purchased when they first opened. He counted the money twice. It wasn't enough. He called former customers. Friends. Anyone who might lend him the difference. Every conversation ended with the same words. I'm sorry. The night before the auction, Darius began packing Mia's things. We'll stay with a friend for a while, he told her. Mia looked at the old hand-painted sign her parents had installed 12 years earlier. If we leave, does Mom's dream have to stay here too? Darius froze. He didn't know how to answer. After Mia fell asleep, he removed the sign himself. He unscrewed it carefully and placed it on the concrete floor. Then he sat alone in the dark. The garage. The house. Elena's memory. Mia's stability. Everything was disappearing. And beneath it all was one question. Was doing the right thing ever supposed to count for something? Saturday morning came. Darius stood at the door, keys in hand, ready to lock the garage for what he believed would be the final time. Then the ground began to shake. At first, it sounded like distant thunder. Then the sound grew louder. Engines. Hundreds. Thousands. Darius stepped outside. His eyes widened. A line of motorcycles stretched down the road as far as he could see. Police vehicles escorted them into town. Darius stared. Not 60 riders. Not 600. 6,000. Every rider wore the same compass star. People poured out of their houses. Store owners stood on sidewalks. Children climbed onto porches. Nobody in Winslow Springs had ever seen anything like it. The motorcycles moved through town in formation. Police blocked intersections. Construction trucks followed. The entire procession headed toward Darius's garage. Darius instinctively pulled Mia behind him. He had no idea what was happening. The lead motorcycle stopped. The rider removed his helmet. Darius recognized him. Hank Mercer. Two more motorcycles stopped beside him. Travis Boone, Garrett Sullivan. The three men from the woods were standing in front of his garage. Healthy, strong, alive. Garrett walked toward him. The three of us came back. He extended his hand. And 5,997 of our brothers and sisters wanted to come with us. Darius slowly shook his hand. He still couldn't process the number. Garrett explained. 16 years earlier, his only son had been beaten and left beside a rural road. For 45 minutes, cars passed. Nobody stopped. By the time someone finally called for help, it was too late. Garrett built the Iron Compass Brotherhood from that loss. Its principle was simple. Ride toward the problem. Never away from it. The Brotherhood had grown into a nationwide organization with tens of thousands of members. They showed up for accident victims, veterans, struggling families, communities everyone else had forgotten. The motorcycles were never the point. The point was what you did when you saw someone who needed help. And Darius had done exactly that. He hadn't known about the Brotherhood. He hadn't worn their patch. He hadn't expected anything. He had simply stopped. Travis stepped forward with a folder. His injured hand was completely healed. Sullivan Heavy Infrastructure needs a maintenance partner for heavy trucks and support vehicles across the Southeast. He handed Darius the folder. We reviewed your work history. Darius looked at him. Travis smiled. We want coal diesel and roadside repair. A 3-year contract. The advance was enough to cover the bank debt. Enough to cancel the auction. Enough to purchase a new tow truck. Enough to keep the garage alive. Darius read every page. Slowly. Carefully. He looked for hidden conditions. There were none. This isn't payment for saving us, Travis said. It's a deposit on work we believe you can do. Darius finally signed. Hank pointed toward the trucks waiting outside. Electricians. Roofers. Welders. Veterans. Mechanics. All were ready. Over the next 72 hours, the Brotherhood rebuilt the garage. They replaced the roof, rewired the electrical system, reinforced the lift bay, rebuilt the tow truck area. But they didn't replace Elena's sign. They restored it. Every letter, every mark, every piece of the old sign stayed. They also built a small office in the back for Mia. A desk. A chair. A quiet place for homework. Darius worked beside them. He refused to stand back and watch strangers rebuild his life's work. By the second night, the entire town had joined. Neighbors brought water. Families brought food. People brought tools. What had begun as strangers helping a stranger became the whole town helping one of its own. Darius had spent years carrying everything alone. He had almost forgotten what it felt like when people simply showed up. Garrett had one more offer. A training program. Right there at the garage. 12 students at a time. Local kids who couldn't afford college. Veterans looking for steady work. Single parents trying to build stable futures. Sullivan Heavy Infrastructure would provide the tools and tuition. Darius would teach. And he would be paid for his time. Garrett also suggested bringing in an experienced mechanic as a mentor. Ray Dalton, the man who had taught Darius the trade decades earlier. "I can't give back what you lost," Garrett told Darius. "But I can help you finish what you and Elena started 12 years ago." Darius looked at Elena's photograph, then at Mia. For the first time since Elena's funeral, he allowed himself to imagine 5 years ahead. Not 5 days. Not 5 weeks. 5 years. He didn't say yes immediately. He asked for one night to think. That night, he spread Elena's old business plan across the workbench. The same pages they had written 12 years earlier. He read every word. By morning, he knew. He said yes. Mia changed too. Once the future became stable, she stopped flinching whenever the phone rang late at night. She began drawing again. Not just pictures of the garage. She filled notebooks with ideas of her own. Darius kept every one. 6 months later, Cole Diesel and Roadside Repair was thriving. 12 employees worked there. 4 were graduates of the first training class. Mia's asthma treatment remained consistent through the insurance coverage available through Sullivan's partnership. Her little desk sat beneath Elena's photograph. She did her homework there every afternoon. Travis helped Darius protect the rescue lift design legally. Garrett funded a working prototype. But Darius kept full ownership. The design didn't make him rich overnight. It was still being tested. But for the first time in years, Darius wasn't merely surviving. He was building. The men who had attacked Hank, Travis, and Garrett were eventually identified. The tow truck's dash camera footage helped police track them down. They were arrested. Darius learned about it from a short phone call. He thanked the officer, then returned to work. He didn't need revenge. The chapter was already closing. Weeks later, after the crowds and cameras had disappeared, Garrett returned to Winslow Springs alone. No procession. No announcement. No cameras. He sat outside the garage with Darius as evening traffic passed. Then Garrett told him the rest of his son's story. The part he had never shared publicly. For 16 years, he had wondered whether people were still willing to stop for strangers, or whether the world had simply moved past that kind of compassion. "You gave me an answer I stopped expecting to get," Garrett said. Darius didn't know what to say. Instead, he reached into his pocket. He had made something himself. A small compass star. He had shaped it from a piece of the chain recovered from the woods after the case was closed. He placed it in Garrett's hand. "The 3 of you got to go home that day." Darius looked at him. "Carry a piece of it with you." Garrett turned the little star over, then placed it inside his jacket, close to his heart. Neither man said anything else. Later that week, Darius and Mia returned to County Road 12. They walked into the same woods. The place where 3 men had once been chained. There, they planted 3 young trees. One for each life saved. Beside them, they placed a small wooden sign. 3 men were left here. One father stopped. Mia knelt beside the smallest tree and pressed the soil around its roots. Then she looked up. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Why did you walk into the woods?" Darius knelt beside her. "Because someday the person who needs help might be you." He brushed dirt from her cheek. "And I'll be praying somebody is willing to stop." Mia thought about that, then smiled. "I hope I'm brave enough to stop too." Darius pulled her into his arms. For a long moment, neither spoke. They stood beneath the trees beside the road where countless cars had once passed without slowing down. The camera pulled back. Two figures. Three young trees. A small wooden sign. And an empty road. Most people would drive past without giving it a second thought. But now 3 trees stood as proof of what happened there. They had been planted by a father and daughter who understood something most people forget. Sometimes being a hero isn't about having special powers. Sometimes it means simply being the person who stops. If you heard a stranger crying for help, would you walk toward them? Or would you keep driving as if you never heard anything at all? Darius never set out to be a hero. He simply refused to become one more car that kept driving. That was the whole story. He never asked to be seen as special. He just kept showing up for the people in front of him. One roadside call. One late night at the workbench. One promise at a time. And somehow, that was enough to change everything. Maybe there's someone in your own life waiting for you to simply stop and show up. Maybe today is the day you do it. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button, because there are many more stories like Darius and Mia still waiting to be told. Thanks for staying with this story all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next one.